church gatherings will now be permitted under adjusted lockdown level 3. Faith-based groups are allowed up to a maximum of 100 people if outdoors or 50 indoors. So let's get some reaction from the South African Council of Churches. Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana joins us from Johannesburg. Bishop, a very good morning to you again. Are you satisfied with this?
Well, I think that we should put a context to it. The context is that that religious organizations of all faiths are committed to the drive to drive down the infection of this virus. That's where we're starting off. And against that background, we recognize that with the infection rates at the rates of 18,000 and 20,000, it seemed inevitable that there would be a kind of a slam down that's going to prevent meeting people and so on. So we did make a case, like all faiths and all churches were making a case for opening up for the space of worship, particularly because it is not just about meeting. It is actually a ministry and a service that does a lot for communities, for families and people to have the time to worship. So the 50 that we have is something that we are satisfied with, and we're happy that government listened to those requests and appeals that were made. But we also know that it is not a license to abandon. It says all of us must use the space we have for the holy purposes, but make sure that we protect people, especially with the non-pharmaceutical measures of mask, distance, hand hygiene, and ventilation, which is why meeting outside allows for more people than inside.
Okay, everyone at this stage hopefully knows what to do. It's implementing that's difficult, isn't it? How are you going to make sure that everybody adheres to what needs to be done?
I think, in all fairness, most churches have actually tried to do this. There are those, that as I say, that throw all caution to abandon, but it's not very much. It's not so much the worship time that caused the infections. It is more the funerals that have been a problem. Most churches have, since the beginning of this, the heavy lockdown, we have learned to have the practices that are necessary. And our churches have supported each other in this regard. I think that the practices of caution are great in the congregations. The problem, I repeat, will always be with the funerals because of the various dimensions of social action that happens in the context of a funeral, as well as the emotions that happen in funerals. And that's where we need to apply much more caution. And the South African Council of Churches has a dedicated website that's called churchinaction.org.za, where we continuously put information and advices and helping churches to be best at this. And we'll continue to do that, especially now that there's a lot of people dying at home, and there are more advisories that are necessary for this.
And Bishop, I should imagine that churches are really important in a time like this, that people miss that sort of congregation, often the wise words coming from pastors. I mean, how important is it? Tell us a little bit more about that, and what your conversation will be with government if they threaten to limit numbers again.
The thing about government is that they never make a statement that says we're going to limit. We just see it when it happens. Yeah. So they'll go below threat. It just happens when it happens. And so we react after it has happened.
Yes.
And then in this case, in the first 2 weeks, we had, we said, okay, maybe, it looks like the numbers seem to require it. But within that 2 weeks, we made a case for it that said that, the things that happen in churches, people think that it's like gathering for the sake of gathering. If you think about Jane, think about a woman who's living with abuse at home. They're not going to walk to the pastor to report that and leave home. But what's going to happen is that when you open for church, what happens is that at the end of the service, the woman comes to the pastor and says, I have a problem. And this is what happens. The man or woman who's lost her job, who's lost her business, will probably want to commit suicide, but because there is the space to come to church, will then be able to say, Muruti, there's a problem, please pray with me. So even the message that a pastor gives, without even knowing who's in the audience and what their needs are, very often has a huge impact on people's lives. So this is why it is necessary for people to be able to come to worship. So it's not just coming. It's not like going to a restaurant. It's not recreation, of course. For people of faith, it is recreational to worship.
Bishop, lovely. Thank you.